Story 1. I live by myself in a small rental cottage on the edge of Riverton, a quiet town where nothing much ever happened. It was a single-story place at the very end of a short, dead-end street with only 5 other houses. The nights there were usually dead silent, which was perfect for me since I worked as a freelance digital artist from home and rarely left except to grab groceries or supplies. Visitors were rare. My friends always texted first. That's why the first set of knocks hit me like a warning. It was a Thursday night around 8:50 p.m. I was sprawled on the couch watching a crime show when 4 solid, confident knocks echoed from the front door. I froze, muted the TV, and waited. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe my tired brain was playing tricks. Then 2 more knocks, firm and deliberate. My stomach tightened. I got up slowly and moved to the door, heart already picking up speed. Through the peephole, I saw a man in his mid-30s standing on the porch, holding a plain cardboard box. Dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low. He looked completely ordinary. I opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain locked. He didn't waste time. "Delivery, needs a signature," he said, reading a name from a small handheld device. The name meant nothing to me. I told him he had the wrong house. He looked at the box, then at the device, then straight at me. His stare lasted a beat too long. When he read my exact address out loud, a cold shiver ran down my back. I repeated that no one by that name lived here. He finally nodded, said it must be bad info, and turned to leave. I watched him walk down the driveway. No van, no car, no headlights. He simply passed the mailbox and vanished around the corner into the darkness. I locked the door and tried to laugh it off. Probably some small courier without proper markings. But something felt off. Sleep that night was restless. Every little sound made me tense. The next night, almost exactly the same time, 3 knocks came again. This time I didn't rush. I went straight to the peephole. Same man, same jacket, same box. I spoke through the closed door, reminding him he'd already been here. He paused, then calmly insisted the system said the package had to be delivered tonight. I refused to sign for a stranger. Long silence. He stepped back, but instead of leaving, he stood there scanning the house. Front windows, side yard, back at the door. Those 15 seconds felt endless. My mouth went dry. Finally, he walked away. Still no vehicle in sight. That was the moment real unease settled in my chest. The third night brought silence. I actually felt relieved and even joked to myself about how weird the whole thing was. Maybe he'd finally figured it out. But on the 4th night, while I was washing dishes around 9 p.m., 4 knocks sounded, not from the front door, but from the side of the house near the dining window. My hands froze under the water. I crept into the dining room. No one visible. Then 4 more knocks from the front. Peephole again. It was him, but this time with empty hands. He knocked once more. I stayed completely silent and backed away so he couldn't see any movement. He stared right into the peephole, like he knew I was there. 30 long seconds later, he turned and left. I waited 5 full minutes in total darkness before checking the windows. Across the street, near the tree line, he was just standing there, facing my house like a statue. After a minute, he melted into the shadows. I rechecked every lock twice, my mind racing with ugly possibilities. The next day, I called the local sheriff's non-emergency line. The deputy said it sounded like someone verifying if the house was occupied. A classic burglar tactic. He told me to get cameras and call 911 immediately if the guy returned. His words made my anxiety spike. That night, I kept the front completely dark and stayed in the bedroom. At 8:45 sharp, 4 knocks. I didn't respond. A few seconds later, 4 more. Silence. Then I heard soft thuds at the back of the house, followed by the back doorknob slowly turning, testing, stopping, turning again. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed my phone, slipped into the hallway, and whispered to the 911 operator that someone was trying to break in. While I was on the call, fresh knocking started at the front. The back knob kept rattling. I realized there might be more than one person. Then came the faint scrape of metal on the doorframe. Everything stopped after 30 terrifying seconds. I stayed on the line until the police arrived. They found fresh pry marks on the back door. One officer told me bluntly, if the house had looked empty, they probably would have forced their way in. The next night, I went to stay at my sister's place across town without telling anyone online. Around 9 p.m., my neighbor called. A man had been knocking on my porch for over 5 minutes. No car visible. I told her to call the police. Officers questioned him. Later, they told me he claimed he'd lost the package and had no company ID or marked vehicle. They warned him to stay away. 2 days later, he was arrested in a nearby neighborhood while trying to break into another empty house. In his car, blank cardboard boxes and a scanner not connected to any real delivery service. He confessed everything. The fake packages, the repeated knocks to test occupancy, watching for light patterns. If lights were on one night and off the next, he assumed the place was empty. Hearing that hit me hard. I had been so close to becoming a victim just by living my normal routine. If I had ignored the door even once early on, he likely would have come back expecting an empty house. I moved out 3 months later when the lease ended. To this day, I never open the door after dark unless I know exactly who it is. Unexpected knocks mean I stay quiet, check cameras first, and if anyone ever mentions a package with my address but the wrong name, I don't even go near the door. That week taught me how quickly normal can turn deadly. Story 2. Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. on Christmas night to the sound of footsteps inside your own house. While the mysterious knocking that's been happening for weeks suddenly makes terrifying sense. My family lived in a warm 2-story home on the outskirts of Aberdeen, up in northern Scotland. It was the kind of close family where evenings meant everyone piled into the living room. TV, games, laughter, and our dogs and cats adding to the chaos. I was 16, almost 17, finishing high school and feeling that mix of excitement and nervousness about what came next. In the days before Christmas, we were deep into our holiday tradition, late-night movie nights. One evening while watching a classic Christmas film, we heard a knock at the front door. Mom went to answer, but the porch was empty. The street was silent, and even checking the garden path that wrapped around the side revealed nothing. We shrugged and went back to the movie. A few days later, I was at the dining table doing schoolwork when another knock came. Again, nobody there. We started blaming neighborhood kids and their knock and run games. In our area, it was pretty common. Nothing serious. But as the week went on, more family members mentioned the same thing in our group chat. The most unsettling was my dad's experience. He usually stayed up latest, gaming or watching shows once the house was quiet. One night around 11:30, he heard a very faint knock. He checked the peephole. No one. He opened the door carefully. Empty street, no running footsteps, no laughter. Just silence. That started to creep us all out. Real pranksters usually made noise when they ran. This felt different, like someone was watching, testing. Christmas Day was perfect. Presents, food, games, way too much eating. Later that night, I felt sick from overindulging and went upstairs to lie down. I dozed off and woke suddenly. My phone said 2:01 a.m. The house was completely silent. Everyone else was asleep. I knew I wouldn't fall back asleep easily, so I stayed in bed in the dark, scrolling on my phone and messaging friends who were also up late during the break. Then came a faint knock. I sat bolt upright, heart instantly racing. It could have been my door, my window, or my imagination, but at 2 a.m. on Christmas night, no one should be outside. My room was on the second floor, yet fear made my skin crawl. I didn't want to move. After what felt like forever, I worked up the courage to open my bedroom door. That's when I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. For a split second, I felt relief, probably Dad heading to bed. I stepped out to say I was still awake. But it wasn't Dad. A stranger, a man I'd never seen, was climbing the stairs unsteadily, clearly drunk and swaying. My stomach dropped. Was this the person behind all the knocking? He was already inside our home. I backed into my room without a sound and quietly closed the door. I could hear him moving down the hallway, opening doors one by one. My mind went blank with terror. It was only a matter of time before he reached my room. Eventually, I peeked out and saw him leaving my little sister's room. Adrenaline finally kicked in. I ran to my parents' bedroom and frantically woke them, whispering that there was a man inside the house. Mom woke instantly. Dad was groggy. We went downstairs together. There he was, passed out on the couch, surrounded by my dad's open beers. Mom shouted at him to get out. He mumbled angrily that the house was his. We tried to move him, but he was dead weight. Mom gave him a slap to wake him. He barely reacted. When Dad took full control and started shouting, the man refused to leave. Dad had to physically drag him out the side door and warn him never to come back. We thought it was over. Then glass shattered inward. The man had punched through the window and shoved his face through the jagged hole. Eyes wild, screaming threats. That he owned the house now, that he knew what we looked like, that he would return. We were in total shock. Police came, took statements, mine was the longest, and left. Fresh snow that night left a trail of blood down the street. They followed it to a nearby playground and found him collapsed with glass in his hands. He was arrested. The window was fixed the next morning. My younger siblings had slept through everything. Because of my age and the threats, I got a restraining order. He was fined and given community service. When asked about the weeks of knocking, he denied everything, claiming he used to live in our house years ago and had simply drunk too much and wandered into the wrong place. Thankfully, no one was badly hurt, just Mom's bruised wrist from that slap. But the earlier knocking was never explained. To this day, sometimes late at night, I still think I hear a faint knock. It might be in my head, or maybe it isn't. I'll never know if it was him watching us the whole time, or someone else. Christmas will never feel quite the same again. Story 3. You're 6 years old, sitting on the porch with your mom during a pouring rainstorm, when a man in a bright yellow raincoat starts walking straight toward your house. What happens next turns one rainy night into years of lingering fear. This happened around 2010 when I was about 6. My mom, older brother, sister, and I lived in a small duplex in a quiet neighborhood called Pine Ridge in the Pacific Northwest. Dad was deployed overseas, so it was just us 4 kids with Mom trying to hold everything together. I missed Dad terribly and always felt his absence deeply. One late rainy night, I was sitting on the covered porch with Mom while she smoked. We were enjoying the sound of the heavy rain together when we noticed a man walking right down the middle of the street. He wore a large, bright yellow rain jacket that stood out sharply in the darkness. It was strange. Pouring rain so late, and usually no one was out. He started veering toward our driveway. Mom's whole body tensed. She quickly put out her cigarette, grabbed my hand tight, and hurried us inside. As we moved, the man stopped near our trash cans and started yelling something at us. I don't remember the words, but the anger in his voice terrified me. Mom locked the door fast and turned off all the lights. I started crying. I was just a little kid and couldn't understand why everything had suddenly become scary. She hushed us all, and we piled into her big bed together, worried but eventually falling asleep when everything went quiet again. That night I had a nightmare that still haunts me. The man in the yellow jacket pressing his face against our window, staring inside. I woke up shaking and crying, waking my sister so I could tell her how scared I was. She took me to the attached bathroom to calm me down without waking Mom or our brother. While we were in there, loud, aggressive banging suddenly exploded on the front door. My sister rushed out and started shaking Mom awake. My brother woke too. I stayed frozen in the bathroom while Mom motioned for everyone to join me. We huddled together as the man kept pounding and screaming for us to let him in. Mom searched desperately for her old phone, but couldn't find it in time. We had no way to call the police. Dad, our usual protector, was thousands of miles away. We sat on the floor in the dark, crying quietly, feeling completely helpless. The neighborhood was small and houses were close, yet no one called the police. Eventually the man left. No officers ever came. It was surreal. A few weeks later, we woke up to the front door wide open, a window ajar, and a big hole cut in the screen. Mom called the police immediately. Several things were missing, including my piggy bank with all my saved money, and most disturbing, a large vase full of family savings that had been sitting on my nightstand right next to where we had all been sleeping. The intruder was never caught. I still don't know if the aggressive man from the rainy night was the same person who broke in. The first encounter felt personal and violent, while the burglary seemed more about stealing. But later I thought I spotted our missing vase on the porch of a reclusive neighbor who lived alone and whom we barely ever saw.